Hello, everybody. It's me, your girl, Angie Clay, and I am here with another awesome interview. And today we're going to talk with Dr. Jen Perez. She's at the forefront of the foot revolution. As the blonde half of Gait Happens, her goal is to educate the masses that there is more to foot health than orthotics and injections. She wants to empower everyone to take control of their lower body health from a biomechanical perspective. And so we're going to talk about that today. And so I know that you're probably thinking, okay, what does all this have to do? Feet, we're going to get into that because we're going to talk about one of the keys of wellness, which is physical wellness, and feet are important, right? And you never know how important things are until you don't have them or they start bothering you. Then you realize, ooh, I took you for granted. So today we're going to talk to her about our feet. So we're going to want you to get comfy, and we always start off with a journaling prompt. And so today's journaling prompt is empty room. So when you hear that phrase empty room, what do you think?
Okay. When I hear empty room, I think creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So with an empty room, you can do whatever you want with it. So it actually kind of hits home because we just bought our house last year,
Uh-huh.
and it's kind of this blank slate where, yeah, you have the bones, you have the walls, but what are you going to do with it? What are you going to create? And I'm pretty proud of the space that we created, but
Mm-hmm.
you can create a space that's calm. You can create a space that's colorful and bright. You can tailor it to yourself and what makes you happy.
I
So
like it because that's what my mind was going to. And I was thinking empty room. I was thinking creativity or like a blank slate.
yeah,
It would be
exactly.
sad to have an empty room with no shoes. I love shoes. Since we're talking about feet. So welcome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're able to come today and share your knowledge with us all.
Thank
So
you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
of course, of course. So let's talk about what you do. And I was, researching. And so I understand in one of your interviews you said you were like a sports chiropractor.
Mhm.
So, usually we just think about, going to the chiropractor and that's it. Like you go to their office, there's nothing else, and they just adjust you and you go about your way. So tell us a little bit about what does that entail?
Yeah, so chiropractic is a lot of different things. So I am a chiropractor, but there's certain offices that you go to, they're going to look at your spine, they're going to adjust your spine and send you on your way. There's certain practices that focus on prenatal and pediatrics, and they do stuff that specializes in kids. And then there's kind of this other genre that's called, the general term is sports chiropractic. And I like to think of it more as movement-based chiropractic, because essentially what we're doing is we're looking at how you move and how that affects the joints, the nervous system, the muscles, and how everything together plays a role in your mechanics. So not only am I going to, adjust the spine, which I actually, half my business is virtual. So I'm not even touching half of my clients. That's where movement plays a huge role, because I can watch somebody move. I can watch them walk or squat or lunge or turn to the side or do heel raises or whatever it is. And it gives me a ton of information about how they move and where they're loading certain parts of their body that can become irritated, essentially. And so rather than just treating the pain, we treat the way that you move and change the way that you move so that we no longer cause the pain in the first place. So it's like looking for the cause, using movement to change the cause versus just treating a symptom.
Wow, that's really amazing. Because a lot of times you hear people that say they go into the doctor's office and like they don't feel like the doctor's really hearing them. But when
Mm-hmm.
I think about what you do, it's like you really have to be in tune with your patient. You're watching, and so that level of care like really is elevated.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So our initial appointment's an hour one-on-one. I make sure all their questions are answered. Like I come up with questions for them, down the road with stuff that I hear a lot when people come back. They're like, well, I didn't quite understand this. But yeah, and also taking into account their goals, someone who's in a ton of pain and their goal is just to walk around their block,
Mhm.
you're going to treat differently than someone whose goal is an ultra marathon and they want to run 100 miles. So it's individualized care for each person, not only from a biomechanics standpoint, because every person moves differently, but also from a, what are you here for? How can I help you and suit your needs basis?
I love it. I've dilly-dallied in taking classes to become an herbalist. And as they were saying, like one thing about traditional medicine, really you go in and the same 10 people go in, they get the same pill, but actually your body reacts differently. So when you go to an herbalist, you get 10 different type of like treatment plans.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing, like, that's just perfect. I mean, that's like the best level of care because each person, like you said, is designed differently and moved differently.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
yeah, I think so too. I agree with you. Uh, so everybody has a specialty. So what made you gravitate towards like focusing like on feet, like really being specialized in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get it all the time. And so when I kind of look back, hindsight's 2020, you don't really realize what's shaping you until you look back when it's kind of not done, because we're always being shaped. But there's two kind of defining moments in my life that really took me down this road. The first was, so how I got into chiropractic in the first place was I actually had chronic shoulder pain. I was a softball player for, I don't know, like 18 years, something like that. So I had chronic shoulder pain, and I ended up with something called bilateral frozen shoulder for 6 years. So essentially I couldn't raise my arms above here for 6 years, either one. So that was really not fun. And so when I was in chiropractic school, I was learning all this stuff about the shoulder to try to help myself. And so I was going to specialize in the shoulder. I'm going to be an overhead athlete. I'm going to work with softball players and volleyball players and anybody who has their hands over their head. And I go to this course called Rock Tape, which is essentially a course where you learn how to use like that stretchy tape that you see on athletes.
Okay.
And the instructor just wouldn't shut up about feet. And I'm just like, nobody cares. Stop talking about the foot. I want to hear about the shoulder, right? But she just kept talking and she kept talking and she talked about the foot for the first time I'd ever heard someone talk about it from a biomechanical standpoint, from the standpoint that the foot has 26 bones, hundreds of muscles, tendons, and ligaments. It's meant to move. It's meant to stiffen and have strength and propel yourself forward. And it's just such a cool marvel of engineering, really. Fun fact, actually, Leonardo da Vinci did a bunch of his engineering based on the structure of the foot. So it really is a marvel of engineering. It's super cool. So that kind of opened my eyes then. And then when I was in student clinic in school, so a couple years later, my mom started having foot pain. And she didn't really know what to do. So I was like, okay, come into the clinic. We'll get you an x-ray. We'll figure out what's going on. And when we got her x-ray, we found out that she has 6 toes. So she actually has 2 toes inside her pinky toe skin. So it's called syndactyly, which is super cool on a nerd standpoint. Yeah. But my lead doc looked at it and he was like, well, there you go. That's why she has foot pain. And I just kind of stood there and it just didn't make sense to me because she was 50 something years old at that time. And like, she clearly didn't just grow this toe, right? So why now? Why did she just start having foot pain in the last 6 months when she's had this toe for 50 years? And so that was when I was like, you know what? People don't understand the foot. They don't understand the mechanics and they just kind of dismiss it and look for the easy answer. And so putting those two kind of experiences together, I was like, I want to get the word out there. I want to treat the foot and I want to empower people to strengthen the foot. Not to get on my soapbox, but if you came into me and you were like, I have back pain, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's get you a back brace. And I want you to wear it for the next 10 years.
Oh,
does that
comfortable? I'm like, great. No, I'm like kind of sad because I'm like, my level of care, like my life, like is restricted now.
Yeah.
Wearing this brace around.
But then you come in and you say, I have foot pain. And I say, here's an orthotic, wear it for the next 10 years.
Another, like, yeah, it just feels like kind of weighs you down because
exactly, right? And orthotics I'm not anti-orthotic. Orthotics are great when they're needed, and they can be used as a short-term tool in order to offload a certain part of the foot so that you don't have pain while we're changing function, while we're working on mobility or strength or whatever movement pattern created the pain in the first place, rather than just sticking a Band-Aid on there, for the next 10 years or permanently in some cases.
I was looking, I was just researching because I wanted to sound smart today. And so you were saying like how the nerve endings, like there's three places: our lips, the feet,
Lips, our hands, and our
and
feet.
fingertips. Hey, I would have passed. I got an A in your class.
Good job. Yeah.
So now we wear all these different types of shoes. I like cute shoes, but I also realize that probably they're not the best types of shoes. So like, does that have anything to do with like our like foot function and like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like you mentioned, so the brain has a map of our body, right? How it senses different areas of our body. And the three areas that have the most sensory nerve receptors, so it gets the most information to our brain, are our hands, our lips, and our feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our hands, that's how we do things. That's what makes us human, right? Our mouth is how we eat. So that's how we stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
Our feet are the only thing touching the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
if I was blind and deaf, how would I know where I am? By where my feet are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's why those areas are so important. So now you take a look at not only the sensory receptors and the information that the brain is getting from the foot, but then how the foot's supposed to function. So like I mentioned, right, there's 26 bones, hundreds of muscles, tendons, ligaments. Does that sound like something that's supposed to be stiff?
Should be real flexible.
Should be flexible, right? Like even our arm only has, a few bones there, 3 bones compared to 26 in one foot. So, and I'm not including the hand in that, by the way, just
Right.
so you know. But it's supposed to be able to be mobile. So when we walk, right, our foot is supposed to be able to splay. And what that does is it absorbs the force from the ground. Laws of physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When I hit the ground hits me.
Mm-hmm.
That's called ground reaction force. So that force is supposed to be dissipated by the foot as it spreads out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, instead, and by the way, when I keep doing this, the toes are supposed to be the widest part of your foot, right? If I'm looking at your foot should look like a pizza slice, right?
When I was in Papua New Guinea, people didn't have shoes, and I was like looking at their feet. I'm like, why are their feet so wide? It wasn't until I'm talking to you now that I'm like, hello, their feet were more normal than mine.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's the difference between like a healthy foot and like a modern foot, right?
Yeah.
And so now we talk about shoes and modern day footwear, and most shoes, so women's shoes, I mean, don't even get me started on women's shoes and pointy toes that I see. I'm like, oh God, that's American foot binding.
Yeah.
But, even like your Nikes or your regular like tennis shoes, if you took the factory insert out of that shoe and then you put your foot on it, your foot would want to be here and the factory insert would be here. So you would see that it has a narrow toe box, which restricts the toes. So going back to when I'm walking, if my foot, it has to do this in order to absorb force, and it can't because there's a shoe there, now what do you see? Well, that force has to go somewhere. So is it the ankle? Is it the knee? Is it the hip? Is it the low back? Right? That force has to go somewhere. So the more we ignore the foot, the more we see knee pain, hip pain, low back pain.
Mm-hmm. So when we're walking, because I know some people may be just listening to this, the toes should spread out wide.
Yep.
And not like in most shoes where the toes are like kind of squished together.
Yes, exactly.
So for visual, people can't see. Some people might look at the video, and some people might just listen.
Like essentially we want to go, if this is my foot, right? Mm-hmm. I want to hit the ground with my heel. This is walking, not running. They're different. But I want to hit the ground with my heel. And then I'm going to bring the outside of my foot down. And then I'm going to bring the inside of my foot down. Just pretend I don't have a thumb here. And then I toe off straight through that big toe. So essentially goes heel out, in, through that big toe. And what we see a lot of times, especially in American society, is people develop this toe out gait because you're either wearing restrictive footwear or they have weak feet or whatever it is, because we tend to ignore our feet as Americans, right? We put them in socks and shoes all day. We take off the socks and shoes. We get into bed. We do it again, right? There's people that have house shoes, which drives me insane. But if we can't get to 1, 2, and 3, what we find is a lot of people go 1, 2, and they rotate the foot out. And now I have to toe off around the big toe rather than through the big toe. And that toe, which is designed to move this way, now has to move this way,
To the
and we
side.
start to see bunions and deformed feet and things like that, and decreased function.
Okay, got it. So my friend, when she heard I was having this, she was like, "Can you ask about bunions?" And I was like,
Yes.
"I didn't have to ask. You just solved it right there."
The two biggest components when it comes to bunions are footwear, right? Because if I have toes shaped like this and I put them in a shoe shaped like this, what's going to happen?
Yeah, your foot's gonna go to the side. Yep.
What's going to, yeah, the shoe wins. So number one is this, and then number two is whatever the mechanics are that are loading that joint in a way that it wasn't designed to be loaded.
So is it usually just the footwear for bunions, or is there like some other factors? But it's
yeah. So I mean, so wide toe box shoes, great place to start. We have a list on our website, gaithappens.com, of shoes that we recommend. They're not going to be what you typically think of as doctor recommended shoes, because doctor recommended shoes usually have arch support and they're rigid and they have a narrow toe box, which doesn't make any sense. These shoes are what we call natural shoes. So they're flat, they're thin, they have no support. I can roll all my shoes up into a ball. Why? Because my foot was designed with everything it needed. I don't need a shoe to do the work for me. So I'm sorry, I don't think I answered your question.
That's great. No, that's great, because I was thinking, because sometimes I'm walking in those little flats that I get, a little on a Target or whatever, and if I hit a rock, I want to come out of my skin, because I feel like it hurts so, like almost like stepping on a nail, and it's a rock. I'm like, why is that so painful? It's like my feet. I was like, maybe because my feet aren't calloused, because
yeah.
we always
the foot, that goes back to the sensory nerve receptors. So we have hundreds of thousands of sensory nerve receptors, which are little like feelers in the bottom of our feet, right? And the nerves become sensitized. So if I'm used to wearing like cushy shoes, right? Like I like my nice soft socks and my cushy shoes. It's like, the analogy that I like to use is like going to the movies in the middle of summer. Okay. So it's the middle of summer. It's a hot day. It's noon, and you go to the movies and you sit in that dark movie theater for 2 hours, whatever it is. And then you go to walk outside. What's the first thing that you do when you walk outside?
Yeah. You squint, like your eyes, like,
oh, right out here, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Your feet are doing the same thing. So what happens when you're in that movie theater is that your brain turns up the volume in your eyesight so that you can see in the dark, right? Well, you're doing the same thing with your foot by putting it in a soft sock, a cushy shoe that can't feel anything. So now the brain's like, I'm trying to feel things. This was designed with a bunch of receptors for a reason. So it turns the volume way up. Right. And so now the volume is on super, super high, and then you take it barefoot or you take it in a flat that's super thin, and the tiniest little disruption in the ground is like, oh my God, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
So it's all about starting to integrate, in a safe way, just different textures back into your feet so that you can turn the volume back down. So one of the great ways to do that, walk around your house barefoot. Try to feel, like, consciously walk around, feel the difference between the hardwood, the carpet, the rugs. Go out into the grass and feel the grass between your toes. It's like one of the best feelings in the world. And start to reintegrate those feelings into those nerve receptors before starting to integrate, like I walk barefoot. When I'm walking my dogs around the neighborhood, I walk barefoot. And, there's parts where we're going over the street and there's gravel everywhere, and I can walk over it just fine. Could I have done that 2 years ago? No, I could not. But I built up, right? I started with soft surfaces, and then I got to smooth surfaces, and I started going for walks, but I brought my shoes with me just in case, and I put them on if I needed them. And now I just grab the leash and go because I don't need anything.
Wow. That was explain when we were growing up. My sister never wore shoes, and then we were like trying to get her. She would run on the rocks, and we had to stop because she was just running on the rocks. And we're like, how does she do that? But she never wore shoes.
That's
awesome.
She
always was barefoot. We'd be like, will you put your shoes on? But now I know. See?
Yeah. She had the healthy feet.
She did have the healthy feet, for sure. So a part of self-care is what we're talking about feet, because having good feet, being able to stand for long periods of time, especially if you work, you're potter, painter, or doing things that you're constantly on your feet. So what types of shoes should someone who, like myself, like I make soap and all that good stuff, and the floor in my studio, it's like cement.
Mm-hmm.
What would be like a good, something that's good for my feet? Should I go barefoot or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend going barefoot right out of gates.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe you can eventually work up to that. So I actually, we have pretty thin, hard carpet in our office, and it's concrete underneath. And I have gotten to the point where I can be in my office all day barefoot. You know, if I end up taking my shoes off during my first patient to show something, some kind of movement, I'll just leave them off the rest of the day. I'm that weird doctor that you show up and she's barefoot. But right now, no. I mean, like you said, when you hit a rock when you're in flats, it hurts a lot. So I wouldn't recommend that right now. We got to build up a little bit. So there is one brand that's on our list called Ultra, like Ultra, but with an A. And they have running shoes. So they have all the other components of a natural footwear shoe. So they have the wide toe box, they're flexible, but they've got some cush. And so that's a really great place to start, is like an Ultra shoe or a Topo, which is Topo. Those are both running shoe companies. So they have a little bit thicker outsole. So they've got some cushion there, but they're not going to interrupt the function of your feet.
Oh, great. I need to try to invest in that. So I want to get my feet ready. Because, that's why I wanted to talk with you, because I can tell on days where I have on the incorrect footwear, like my days are shorter. Like I need to sit down a little bit longer. I'm like, ooh, my feet, I kind of adjust, or I'm like, oh, I'm tired because my feet are hurting. And the days that I do wear something that has more support than like these real thin shoes, I can go a little bit longer. And so this is why it's just so important with our physical wellness, that our whole body is a well-oiled machine, but we do really neglect the feet. When I first saw you like last year, I was just like, man, we really do neglect our feet. Like we don't, like, we just
didn't even think about it.
No.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's really interesting because we're in the age of, self-care. We're in the age of taking charge of your health. I have patients that are more educated now than ever before because they do their research, right? And, when patients are trying to avoid shoulder surgery by doing rehab and they go to PT and things like that, but then you go to the foot and everything goes out the window. And it's just really fascinating because I'm not really sure where the disconnect is. We're hungry for natural as a society. We're hungry for taking charge of our health. And then, it comes to the foot and they're like, oh, no.
Yeah. Your main form of transportation.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The foot acts as a foundation for everything above it. You wouldn't build a house on shaky grounds. Right. There's no way. And then you just take the foot and you make it weak, or you put it in a cast essentially, and just say, okay, let's go about our day and strengthen my shoulders and my whatever. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you're bringing it up, because if you think about it in terms of just longevity, you could have a career that lasts, for example, 30 years, but if your feet start breaking down, it may only last 20, because now in your feet, you can't really do what you did before. You have to shift and doing something else differently, or having an aide have to sit down or whatever, when you could have taken care of your feet properly and been able to put some more miles on them.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that too, like let's say you work for 30 years and then you retire. Well, what are you going to do if your feet are shot out, right? Because like when you retire, that's supposed to be the best part of your life. You get to go enjoy it. You want to go hike. You want to go on these adventures. Well, if your feet hurt all the time, like you're not going anywhere.
Oh, exactly.
So, yeah.
So I'm so glad we're having this discussion. So what do you do for self-care?
In general, or for my feet?
Yeah, like for you, and we can talk about for feet too, because people might be like, hey, I want to know what I can do. I'm going to go for my feet. So for yourself, because you're busy always helping other people, what do you do for self-care for yourself?
I'm very body aware. So and mentally as well. So lately what I've been doing is So it's kind of complicated, but my husband essentially moved away for half the week. So he lives out of town Monday through Thursday, and then he comes back Thursday night and he's here through Sunday. What that's done for me is it's given me an opportunity to kind of utilize Monday through Wednesday as my like heavy work days. And so I know on those days, like I'm going to be working until 8 or 9 at night, whether it's doing an Instagram post or whether it's, you know, writing a blog or whatever it is. And then when he comes home on Thursday, I have a hard cutoff. Like when he gets home, there's no more work. I work, you know, my work hours during Friday, but then that's it. There's no after work. Right. You know what I mean? So setting those hard timelines for me has been really helpful. And it's helpful for our relationship. We only get to see each other 3 days a week. So now we really take advantage of that time together. So that's as far as mentally, that's been a big thing for me, is kind of knowing, I mean, working 8 to 5 is not going to be realistic for me because of what I do. And so I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to have to work extra hours. Where am I going to allot these so that it's not interfering with the rest of my life?
Right. Yeah.
And then from a physical standpoint, you know, I work out in the morning, and it's a great way to start my day. I am a huge excuse maker. So like I would much rather work out in the afternoon. Like I feel a lot stronger in the afternoon, but I get done with work and I'm like, you know, it's been a long day. I'm just kind of tired. Oh, I'm not going to go. Right. Like I am a huge excuse maker. So I just make myself get up and do it in the morning. Like I know I'm not going to want to get out of bed, but when I'm in the gym, once I'm warmed up, I do it and I feel great the rest of the day. And I'm glad that I did it. So for my health, that's really big for me. I'm a big sleeper. You can ask my husband, nothing interrupts my sleep. Like, it's like, oh, it's 9 o'clock. All right, good night. Like, maybe go, I'm out. Like,
I can do a cup of coffee and still be like knocked out.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I don't do well when I get, you know, I feel like I'm like an 8 or 9 hour sleeper. And if I get like 7 or less, like, you don't want to hang out with me the next day.
I hear you. I know about that workout. Like I would go to the gym super early and like, why? I'm like, look, by the end of the day, you say you want to go to the gym, but you don't. As if I already had it done. Like when you're contemplating about going to the gym, I'm like, check, I already did it. So I feel you. You don't want to get up, but once you get going, it works out well.
Yep. So as far as the feet go, you know, I'm kind of at an advantage because I'm teaching people foot exercises all day long. So I get to do foot exercises all day long. But in general, normally what I recommend for people is have a routine and incorporate it into a routine. So, you know, whether that's like your morning routine is you brush your teeth and then you get dressed and then you whatever, you know, it's somewhere in that routine, put like a foot routine. And that can just be doing like taking a ball, like a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, and rolling it under your foot. That's like, that alone, doing that twice a day, every day, will be a game changer for most people, because you're doing two things, right? You're massaging the tissues, right? Just like you get a massage everywhere else, there's muscles there. So they get tired. They carry you all day long. So you're going to massage the muscles and you're going to stimulate all of those sensory nerve receptors. So it's going to wake you up. So I would say rolling the bottom of your feet twice a day, awesome way to like incorporate that into your routine. Other stuff that you can do for strength, some of our tried and true favorites are heel raises. So like when you like hold onto a wall and you like raise up onto your toes, really making sure to press through the ball of the big toe there. So not just doing it just to do it, but do it with good mechanics. So going up through the ball of the big toe. Or what we call toe yoga. So toe yoga is where you take your foot and you keep the 4 toes down and you just raise the big toe. And then you bring that back down and you just raise the other 4 toes. So
going on like just naturally.
How what?
I said I always do that, like, you know, naturally. Like I always like play around with it, you know. I'm like, why do I always do that? But it feels like relaxed, like it relaxes my foot.
Good. Yeah. You're firing up all the intrinsic muscles of the foot, which is super, super healthy. A lot of people, you know, that's the first thing I have them do when they come into the office, just so I can get basically a basic idea of what their foot strength looks like. And I would say probably at least 7 out of 10 can't do it. Like they like, I'm telling my big toe to raise and it's not doing anything. And so that connection between the brain and the foot has just, it's got a lot of cobwebs on it. Wow. So we got to dust those off.
I wasn't doing that. I mean, I just did it one time, and it felt like my foot needed to stretch or something. It was weird, and I'm like, ooh, I felt like relief, and now I just have a habit of always doing that.
That's fantastic.
Awesome to know. Ooh, I'm a couple steps ahead of the game. All right, everybody else, you guys got to implement this in for self-care. We want to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So awesome. Thank you so much. So I was on your website, and I saw that you had a class that is a no-brainer price. So if anyone really wants to learn more about what we talked about today, will they be able to get that in that course?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, so we have two things, actually. We have our Foot Health 101 course. Again, you can find that at gaithappens.com. And that's GAIT, not the kind of gate that you open and close. And the Foot Health 101 course, it's, I think, an hour and 15 minutes. And it kind of talks about a lot of the stuff that we've kind of covered, about how the foot needs to be mobile, how it needs to be strong. But we go into more detail about basic anatomy. Like, we're not trying to go over your heads here. We're just trying to make it so that you understand why it's important. We talk about fascia, which is connective tissue all over our body, and how the foot is connected to the rest of the body. And then we give you, I think it's like 20, maybe 10 or 20 different exercises for mobility and for strength that can really improve the health of your feet. So that, I believe, is at $50 right now for that course. The other thing that we have, so, if you want more of ongoing support, or if you're like, what, this sounds really cool and I want to start this journey, we have a new membership, and it's called the Foot Function Membership. And that you get 75 videos. So when you purchase the membership, you get access to these videos, and they're split up by joint just to make it easy. So we have foot and mobility and strength. Then we have ankle mobility and strength, knee, hip, and spine. And so there's all these different videos of exercises that are explained step by step that can help you. And then there's also a community function. And the community function is what we think is really cool, because it's a place for people to come together and ask questions. You can put a post in there that says, I'm struggling with this exercise. Does anybody have any tips? I'm dealing with this. Does anybody have a favorite shoe? Things like that. And it's not just the foot, right? It's the whole lower body. I like to say from the ribs down, because everything works together. So, if you're like, I don't have foot pain, which would make you very rare, because 7 out of 10 Americans have foot pain. But if you don't have foot pain, but you're like, but I have hip pain, it's still a great option for you, because it looks at how everything comes together.
Wow, that's really good. Okay, well, that's a lot of good information, and a really nice starting point for anyone who may be feeling like they really want to take their healthcare in their own hands and be more proactive with it. It's a really good way to have that community-based portion.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and that actually starts at $15 a month, I think. So yeah, so it's pretty, like you said, no brainer in my
opinion. $15 a month?
Yeah, $15.
Wow, that is. I was like, oh, this is probably, it's probably a big package and has all these working components. And
yeah, I mean, our goal is really to get the word out there. We want as many people to have access to this information as possible, which is why we created the membership and why we created the course, because we do offer virtual consultations for people all over the world. Right. But you're getting a one-on-one interaction with a doctor. So that's going to be a little bit of a higher price point that not everyone can afford. So we wanted to create something that anyone can afford. So that's why we did it. We want to help people.
Wow, that is really awesome. So I'll probably be in the community because I want to know more. And yes, and to help my mom. And my friend also was asking me some questions about it as well. And my sister is studying to be a nurse practitioner. This is something else that she can put underneath her belt too. So this is really, I'm so happy that we got together.
Yay!
So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you. So we know that we can find you at, go ahead and repeat your website one more time.
Sure. Gait, Gait, happens.com. You can also find us on Instagram as our biggest channel of information. So it's just at Gait Happens. My personal Instagram is the Gait Doctor. So yeah, any of those channels, you can get a hold of us. And my email, if you wanted to send me an email, is just drjenniferperez@gmail.com. Jennifer does have one N because my mom hates me. Not really, but she wanted to make my life complicated. Let's say it that way.
So I want a little twist.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming. So like Jen said, you can reach out to her if you need extra support, a no-brainer community you can join for $15. If you really want to get down and dirty, learn about your feet, you got a course for $50. So all these things are really, really reasonable. Of course, the links will be in the show notes. And so thank you so much for taking the time to sit and listen with us and take this information and really consider it, especially all you creators out there, business people who really want to build these beautiful empires, but at the same time, you want to be able to enjoy them standing up. So until we meet again, thank you, Jen,
Thank
and
you.
have a great day. Okay, bye, everybody.